So I thought we'd get in the mood with a few pieces of choice ABC programming. Obviously, some of them very clearly centred on Tasmania. Surprise, surprise. Thanks to Roger for his generous introduction and to the many members of the ABC Friends, the University of Tasmania and the Australian Institute for International Affairs for the invitation to address you tonight. It's a great honour, one I value personally and on behalf of my board colleagues, and frankly, for all of those who work at the ABC in Tasmania and across Australia. In doing so, I pay respect to the traditional and original owners of this land, the Moanina people. I pay respect to those that have passed before us and acknowledge today's Tasmanian Aboriginals, the Palawa, who have an uninterrupted continuity as custodians of the magnificent lands and many waterways which comprise Tasmania. I also take this moment to acknowledge the diverse peoples and cultures who have been welcomed to this nation, along with the freedoms, rights and faiths they have brought or represent. Acknowledging this is crucial given the never-ending assault on difference which too often permeates society today. It's great to be among friends. I can't think of a better way to finish my tour of the state this week than in your company. I've been visiting Tasmania, talking to our staff, to our viewers, to our listeners, to many decision makers, and to you, our special national band of supporters, to build momentum for a new era of investment in your ABC. The ABC is one of the most important national institutions we have, indeed a unique part of Australia's lived experience, delivering services to all the vast Australian landmass, which is unrivalled anywhere by any other media organisation in any other nation for national coverage. The only one that comes close is Russia, which has about a little bit less than 90% reach in its landmass. Please bolster the ABC with your feedback, your advocacy, and by recommending it to fellow Australians far and wide. The ABC always needs friends, and the Friends have been defending and promoting the ABC for 50 years. Importantly, always reminding our leaders of the ABC's unique value to the nation, especially through some dark years when powerful friends have been, frankly, very scarce. All of us will have our own reasons for supporting the ABC. Perhaps you grew up with Play School, or as a teenager watched Countdown, or ate dinner with your parents every night in front of the 7 p.m. news, or now watch Bluey with your children or grandchildren. My guess is that when it's all said and done, our belief in the ABC comes down to a love of our nation and its remarkably diverse culture. Today we're spoilt for choice in news and entertainment, where one can get the best of the world anytime anyone wants. Cheap, limited offers mean you can read or watch just about anything for the price of a takeaway coffee per week. For as little as $30 a month, you can subscribe to the New York Times. For $1 per week, you can start a daily selection from the Financial Times. The Times of London will cost you £5 for a year's introduction. There are international podcasts that can be had for free or comparative peppercorn prices. And of course, there are all those great streaming platforms we all consume, which vary on price but deliver handsome foreign choice. Yes, it's marvellous, mostly, but it isn't about us. We need and want to see our own culture, know our own stories, hear our own voices and accents, be on top of our own news, and know that the news is accurate and true. It requires investment. Frankly, it requires the ABC. I mentioned Bluey just now because it starts with our kids. If they don't hear Australian voices when they're very young, they won't take them seriously when they grow up. They'll think important voices come only in American, English, Chinese, or other accents. That's why, in addition to Bluey, we have Bananas in Pyjamas and shows for older children like Do Not Watch This Show, Knee High Spies, Caper Crew, and Tales of Outer Suburbia, I should say. This is some of our most important programming because it's the starting point for creating respect for Australia, respect for Australia's stories, and respect for its culture. Supporting the ABC is essentially about supporting Australian sovereignty, backing national pride and self-respect, showing the world what we are capable of. Our actors, musicians, writers, painters and artists of all kinds are as good as any on the planet, standing out in the world of literary prizes, popular music, and of course in Hollywood. Kate, Nicole, Rose, Naomi and Tony, I could go on, women so famous their first names suffice, just like Hugh and Guy and Rusty and Sam and Mel. And in music, Kylie and Keith, Dame Joan and Olivia. I have a question for you. Who is the hottest leading man in the world today, and who is the hottest leading lady? Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie, Heathcliff and Kathy in Wuthering Heights, Aussies, top global box office success. For a nation of just 28 million people, this level of international recognition is beyond impressive. For the nation, it's priceless. You can't buy such publicity, such cachet. Other countries spend small fortunes building brands. We have the creative products of NIDA, the Film School, and the ABC. Australia used to be known for its sport, beaches and marsupials. Now we're also known for our culture, everywhere. All 60,000 years of it, the rock paintings, the dreaming, the longest uninterrupted creative civilization in the world. Our novelists like Richard Flanagan, Peter Carey, Alexis Wright and Michelle de Cresta. Our painters like Sidney Nolan and Ben Quilty, Margaret Preston and Rosalie Gascoigne. Our popular musicians like Nick Cave, Chrissy Amphlett, In Excess, Kylie Minogue, and of course, the Bee Gees. Our dancers like Bangara and the incomparable Australian Chamber Orchestra. Innovative, unmissable, totally Australian, and all number one, again and again. Here is real national strength. It binds us together, tells us who we are, gives us a collective narrative to face the challenges of an increasingly volatile and dangerous world. All this cultural production starts in our schools, universities, specialist training institutions, theatres, opera houses, dance studios, recording studios, music venues and bookshops. But much of it finds its first wide audience on the ABC, and only on the ABC. The ABC is Australia's biggest cultural asset of them all, the biggest source of news of them all, often the biggest educator of them all, and an asset that reaches across our region to spread mutual understanding and a genuine, true love of democracy through Asia and the Pacific. We're currently in a good starting place for invigorated action. The ABC's value is being recognised and rewarded. In the 2024-25 budget, the Australian government stabilised our funding. Last December, it announced another $50 million over 3 years for quality new children's drama and documentary content. And this month, in the most recent budget, very importantly, renewed our vital Indo-Pacific broadcasting program with its factual programming and essential training of local journalistic talent across the Pacific, PNG and Timor-Leste. Our reputation as the nation's most trusted source of news and serious current affairs is unchallengeable. We're trusted by 79% of the community and valued by 81% of the community, unless you live in the bush, where we're valued by 83% of the community. Properly, we acknowledge the government and Parliament's positive support. And while we understand the intense fiscal pressures bearing on Canberra right now, we intend to keep pressing our case for increased investment because that case is overwhelming. In many ways, we can't afford not to make it. There is still catching up to do. So tonight, I want to explain how our nation can become stronger with refreshed, invigorated investment in the ABC. The first reason is that we embody the living principle of freedom of the press. The ABC is increasingly indispensable to our democracy. The great Enlightenment concept that underpins democracy, freedom of the press, is increasingly under threat. In some places, it has already been eliminated. The recent Four Corners episode, The Zero Line, detailed the destruction of freedom of speech in Putin's Russia. If you haven't watched it, I urge you to do so on ABC iView. Here, thankfully, freedom of the press stands strong. It has a long and colourful history. It wasn't handed to us by our British forebears. It had to be fought for, and it still does have to be fought for. And what better to remind us of this than the title of this annual lecture, Andrew Bent. Many of you will know his story. I want to tell you briefly what it means to me. On the 2nd of February 1812, Andrew Bent, an orphan, arrested for burglary, sentenced to 7 years transportation to the colonies, arrived in Hobart town via Port Jackson on the ship Ruby. He made a lifetime of defying all authority, and Charles Dickens would certainly have made him a memorable character. Like many Dickens characters, Bent was a thief, but a literate one, as well as a trained printer. Two skills he used to bring to Australia the great Enlightenment principle of freedom of the press. Instead of quarrying rocks, he became a newspaperman at the colony's only newspaper, the Derwent Star and Van Diemen's Land Intelligencer, Australia's first published newspaper, which had commenced in 1810. The Times of London, it definitely was not. In The Fatal Shore, Robert Hughes called the Derwent Star and the other early Tasmanian newspapers rough, choleric and short. Little more than pungent dirt sheets that tried to win their petty circulation wars with stilted, lurid rhetoric. Today, they would be more Kyle and Jackie O on Sydney breakfast radio than David Spears and the Insiders. But it beat breaking rocks under the lash at Port Arthur. Bent soon became the official government printer and proprietor of his own newspaper, the Hobart Town Gazette. No politician could tell him what to publish or provide lessons in taste. Let's call him the very first dirty digger. To Lieutenant Governor Arthur, Bent was an unrestrained seditionist. To his own lawyers, though, he was Australia's Benjamin Franklin. When Lieutenant Governor Arthur tried to introduce newspaper licensing to control what was published, Bent defied him, successfully appealed over Arthur's head, and became the first publisher of an uncensored newspaper in Australia. But it came at a very high cost. In 1825, Bent was sued for libel, fined and jailed, and again in 1828, 1830 and 1836. The use of libel, as we all know, has a long and really nasty history in Australia. This happened to other Tasmanian publishers too. One jailed publisher from Bent's days recalled sharing a cell with Tassie's infamous escapee and serial killer and cannibal, Alexander Pearce. I've worked with cannibals in my time. I can tell you it's not comfortable. Bent eventually had enough and chose a more respectable profession, that of publican, before dying up in the mainland, sadly, as a defeated pauper. But his defiance established the principle that made our democracy possible, freedom of the press. We owe him and others like him a great deal. They deserve to be remembered. In this city, Hobart, a formally endorsed city of literature, as your Lord Mayor reminded me yesterday, we should recall the literary first that Bent was part of, apart from his legal stoushes. He published the first set of essays, The Hermit in Van Diemen's Land, in 1829, written by Henry Savary, who went on to write Australia's first novel, Quintus Surbiton, you're all saying, I can hear it resonating, of 1829. We have so much to absorb from that early history. Some 200 years later, Bent's hard-established principle of freedom of the press is still alive. But is it safe? Does it have a future? In a legal sense, yes, it's sort of safe, but only sort of. Our legal protections for press freedom remain, notwithstanding the never-to-be-forgotten AFP raids on the ABC as recently as 2019. However, the main threats today are practical and come from technology. The hand-assembled type of Bent's day has long been superseded, and today the internet and social media are making it diabolically difficult for newspapers to monetise their journalism. The flow of advertising revenues to Google, Meta, X and others has been relentless and devastating in its consequences, ripping the heart out of commercial newsrooms. It is the very subject of energetic legislative discussion and regulation presently. Artificial intelligence is predicted to make this damage worse. It threatens not just to replace journalists with machines by the more dire predictors, it threatens the very existence of the concept of truth by flooding the airways with misinformation and disinformation, which makes the exercise of democracy that much harder. If you're a betting person, put your money on the Oxford English Dictionary's word of the year for 2026 to be slopaganda. The question for Andrew Bent in 1826 was, how do we protect the truth by defeating censorship? The question for us in 2026 is, how do we protect the truth by ensuring AI is harnessed intelligently? It's a question the ABC is working hard to address. We immediately run into a conceptual problem. We can't hold back technology. Like the atomic bomb, once it was theoretically possible to build AI, it would inevitably be built. Only in time-travelling science fiction novels might AI be uninvented. The point is not to try to uninvent it, but to make it work for the common good. History shows that people have tried. Interestingly, this also includes the early history of Tasmania. In 1812, and again in the early 1830s, waves of English labourers were transported to Tasmania for destroying the steam-powered machinery, displacing their jobs in the weaving and agricultural industries. Today we call these disparate rebels Luddites. The new technology of their day had cut their wages, made their centuries-old skills redundant, created mass unemployment, and condemned their families to starvation and destitution. Their battles against technology were mostly lost, and their history was written by the victors. As a result, Luddite is now a pejorative term, referring to someone opposed to technological advances that boost productivity and benefit everyone in the long run. Put in this crude way, those calling the regulation or pausing of AI might be labelled 21st century Luddites. Perhaps, though there are positive lessons from the Luddites' defeat. Many historians believe the Luddites received a bad press. They argue their leader, the fictional Ned Ludd, that's where the name comes from. This name was invented for a fictional leader who was actually masterminding the mass protests of the so-called Luddites. He was a man of principle and conviction, and that the Luddites weren't opposed to technology per se, but how it was imposed without considering the broad social consequences. While the great steam-powered technological advances of the 19th century did eventually raise living standards for millions of people, in the short run it was catastrophic, producing the Dickensian horrors of the early unregulated factory system, including child labour. For this reason, many consider Luddism a national response to indiscriminate, unregulated change. The Luddites transported here to Tasmania remind us of the long history of human struggle to make technology work for the benefit of society. Their example gives us something to think about as we face another all-embracing technological revolution, one even more profound than the Industrial Revolution. At the very least, it tells us we can do better than just let it rip. 25 years ago, the internet was regarded as an escape from the real world. Today, the real world allows us to escape the vice-like grip of the internet. I am determinedly for change. I've long been an early adopter of all things digital. I use AI regularly myself and am excited by its potential, especially in the fields to which I have devoted my life: the arts, the media, entertainment, and education. I'm definitely no Luddite. But I do believe that we have an active duty to ensure AI's boundless potential is put to use in the name of democracy, freedom, happiness, and human decency, and that the potential benefits don't take generations to reach the communities whose livelihoods it is rapidly affecting. Technological change can't be held back, but its benefits must be spread widely, not concentrated in a handful of so-called tech bros. Restraining AI from harming our society will take new policy, new regulations, public education campaigns, and strong democratic leadership. The ABC is once again offering thoughtful leadership, making itself a voice for sanity and relevant application of AI in the service of Australian citizens. AI use across the ABC will be adopted where it strengthens the services we provide to audiences, supports content creation, improves research and reporting, makes ABC content more accessible, and helps teams work together more effectively. This will be done through carefully managed training and experimentation, aimed always to enhance quality, accuracy, reliability, and public value. ABC staff will remain responsible and accountable for any ABC content created or assisted by AI in its production. AI may support content making, operational and internal work, but it will not replace human creativity, expertise, or editorial judgment. Editorial control and approval will remain with appropriately authorised ABC staff, with a primary focus on integrity, public trust, and respect for the rights of creators and rights holders. We will always be aiming to put the public interest in first-rate work first. Crucially, we're alerting Australians to the realities of AI, how it works, what the benefits and dangers are, and encouraging them to think it through for themselves, hopefully by using it. The ABC has an unwavering commitment to asking necessary questions about new technology, and the purveyors of AI and other crucial issues demand that we follow the facts, look to real-world examples, and explain the processes as helpfully as possible. This has been the theme of our current Keep Asking advertising campaign, which you saw at the start of this evening's event. Some of our most recent innovative programming has involved helping Australians understand the profound dangers posed by manipulation of information technologies, including AI, on an industrial scale. Some of you may have seen Hamish MacDonald's marvellous three-part series and examination of the many tech and other issues in The Matter of Facts. The issue has also been subject of another winner for us, Matt Bevan's If You're Listening. The recent series of programs on Palantir I thought were really invaluable. You may also have seen some excellent recent Four Corners acquisitions on the issue, Inside the Rage Machine and Trump and the Tech Titans. As always, we invite teachers across the country to use these programs freely in their classrooms to get young people thinking deeply about what is at stake in the way they adopt new technology. We've also started deploying wide-scale explainers for young audiences through BTN and BTN High on matters of modern technology and its impact on democracy. The secondary students of today need to be across these big issues if they are to lead responses capably a decade from now. ABC Education has been a leader in the media literacy space and continues to develop contemporary and timely resources for teachers and students, such as the recent Media Explained series, to complement its already extensive range of media literacy resources. They're all available for all of you to watch, incidentally. Everything the ABC produces is on the internet. All of the material is there for you freely to look at if you want to interrogate what we're doing in the education strands. These programs and others constitute high-quality curriculum materials that will help our teachers inform, engage, and challenge the thinkers and leaders of tomorrow. This broad educative role is one of our major charter responsibilities. Educating Australians in our envied system of self-government will make our democracy ever stronger. For this reason, we have an abiding and renewed commitment to documentary and related programming to inform Australians about their society, their history, the institutions of our nation, and outstanding achievers. Our current and recent lineup is quite exceptional in that regard. It's all there on iView. I personally loved Annabelle Crabb's series Civic Duty about our electoral system. The highlight for me being opening the doors on that great Aussie invention, the Australian Electoral Commission. Annabelle is a true star and made the Electoral Commission really quite sexy. Larissa Berendt's and Victoria Midwinter Pitt's Judgment, Cases That Changed Australia, is an excellent examination of the great modern decisions of the High Court and how it has enhanced the rights and freedoms we all enjoy. There's also Rachel Griffiths' When the War is Over, about our amazing war artists, including describing the indelible impact which iconic songs like Cold Chisel's Khe Sanh and Red Gum's I Was Only 19, pardon me, have had on Australian sensibility. And let's not forget Mark Fennell's Stuff the British Stole, about, yes, all that stuff the British stole from us and other countries. And we must not forget the important body of work that the Education Unit produces for students and teachers, such as the recent series Journeys of Hope, which uncovered moving and important immigration stories of the Holocaust and Holocaust survivors. In this instance, most of the Holocaust survivors in the program arrived in Australia as young children. They're now very elderly people. I had the pleasure of launching that program. And Vietnamese refugees. Similarly, stories of old people who are transmitting to next generations. Most of that stuff is a mystery to young Australians. They have no knowledge or contact or experience of any of those things. In fact, I was at a function a few years ago and I said, "Put up your hand, those who remember the Vietnam War." And I was the sole volunteer. We need to remember and we need to inform. In the coming year, ABC Education will be working on a suite of resources to engage and educate teenagers on the rich history and importance of our democracy. And on top of all this, we remain the reliable broadcaster of record for the big unifying events that celebrate our nation's democracy and history and bring us together. Pillar events like state and federal elections, Anzac Day, yes, Australia Day and New Year's Eve. No other media organisation in Australia performs anything approaching these outstanding foundation stories and their foundation stones to public service broadcasting. Personally, I think we should all be quite proud of it. We're raising standards, and nowhere is this more important than an Australian drama production. Nothing unites us more, gets us thinking more, discovers more acting and production talent than serious drama, and the national broadcaster must create more of it. We have an unmatched commitment to the great independent production sector in Australia, which demonstrates time and again what it is capable of creating. The ABC is deeply committed to the independent production sector and that level of commitment will only grow as we go forward across the board. There's more to come, made possible by the recent investment from the Commonwealth Government. You've already seen Goolagong, which Australians loved. Now look out for Treasure and Dirt, a superb adaptation from a Chris Hammer thriller set in an opal mining community. You can all secretly admit to each other that you read Chris Hammer in private. I encourage you all to wait for Dustfall. It will be the premium topical crime offering this year with a razor-sharp, nail-biting focus on predatory behaviour. And then there is Shakedown, a dramatic explosion that takes us all on the harrowing journey of robo-debt, a story that very much demands to be told in the national interest. The additional funding I mentioned earlier will also enable us to create more distinctly Australian children's content. We've already announced a new adaptation of the much-loved Bananas in Pyjamas and a series based on Andy Griffiths and Terry Denton's best-selling Treehouse books. And there are comedies that keep on coming, but more of that in a moment. Perhaps the most important of our missions is bringing our regions and cities together. In few nations is the population so far-flung geographically and yet so united culturally. Bridging these vast distances is one of the ABC's most profound responsibilities, which it does through national news programming and other dedicated regional programs. These evergreen and new programs are the backbone of our radio and television offerings. Shows like Landline, The Country Hour, which had its 80th anniversary last year, Backroads, Muster Dogs, as well as the 800 plus hours of original broadcasting we put out across regional audio each and every week of the year. 800 hours a week. Not only does all this display the virtues and generosity of hundreds of otherwise overlooked communities to the nation, it brings in very welcome economic activity through considerable production expenditure. Much of every dollar we spend on regional programming stays in the regions. Much of the work generated is done, of course, by regional workers. Tasmanians especially know the importance of the work we do. According to our research, 9 in 10 Tasmanian ABC digital users believe the quality and relevance of our content is good or better. Now, we all know Australians are hard markets. You know, nothing is great. It's always, no, it wasn't bad. 53% of people in Launceston and Hobart use an ABC radio station regularly every week. 54% of people in Tasmania watch an ABC television channel or stream ABC iView each and every week of their life. And it's not surprising why. My very dear and very close friend, the late Peter Sculthorpe, one of Tasmania's most distinguished creative sons, was known across the length and breadth of Australia because of ABC Classic and its predecessors. In this, the 50th anniversary of ABC Classic, let's remember the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra will be heard regularly, connecting Australians with that vital, energetic band of players. And in 2029, you can count on Sculthorpe's centenary matching similar celebrations for the 250th anniversary of Beethoven next year. After all, we live and work in Australia. Some of our best and most experienced talent works here in Tassie, like Sabra Lane, our wonderful 7 p.m. weekend newsreader, and who also contributes to Stateline with lots of stories and is known and adored from her previous work for 7:30 and as the presenter of AM and her work on The Bright Side. And like Paddy Manning, one of Australia's top investigative reporters based in our Hobart newsroom, who has done some remarkable pieces since he moved to Tasmania last year. Our news coverage and general production capacity outstrips any other media organisation here by a country mile. Spread across 3 offices in Hobart, Launceston and Burnie, with no divisional conflict between any of them. They're run as a united unit. It's unique in the ABC across Australia. It genuinely is unique. There's a morning news conference and everyone participates. Burnie, Launceston and Hobart, and I had the great privilege of sitting in on it yesterday. They make 28 unique local radio programs every week, producing over 900 unique online articles that have real impact, including TassieCast, our state-based news podcast that provides the issues of the week in the state. Crucially, last year, our Tasmanian teams covered 24 emergency events, over many days, of course, certainly the most urgent work we do. Helping Tasmanians in time of emergency is one of our top tasks. We now, believe it or not, cover over 700 emergency events nationwide every year. The thought of facing a major bushfire or storm without the ABC relaying vital information now seems unimaginable. We'll always be there when you need us most. And now we share it openly with other media as required, in the national interest, in the community interest. We actually provide full service emergency broadcasting to any regional media across the length and breadth of Australia at no charge. We do ask that they acknowledge it came from the ABC, but I think that's often honoured in the forgetting department. So we are great believers in the importance of local media. Without it, maintaining cohesive communities and local democracy becomes much more difficult, almost impossible. Trusted local information is the lifeblood of any community, and yet it's under threat. As I've mentioned, news across the world is ours for a few dollars these days, and yet local newspapers and their equivalents are disappearing rapidly. Lacking the objectivity provided by professional journalists and editors, social media can't be trusted to replace it, if at all. If we have no understanding of what is happening locally, what hope does local democracy, that vital tier of our democratic system, have? Our remit at the ABC, therefore, isn't limited to the big global and national stories, but to the small local ones too, and you will see that increase dramatically over the course of the next 5 years. Our top news hounds spread across the major Tasmanian cities have a remit to get around the outer suburbs and towns and find the local news that matters, including an obligation to fill their bulletins with more Tasmanian and locally generated stories. In March, we even embedded a news team in Bridgewater operating out of the local library to cover local issues in depth. Just recently, we covered the biking and money laundering claims which tainted, or should I say haunted, the Hellier mine as government considered a shutdown. We also investigated the warnings of Labor Party elders that Tasmanian Labor is in danger of becoming the state's permanent opposition. Big picture stories crucial to Tasmania's future. We're proudly part of the Tasmanian community in so many other ways too. Before I go into those things, I did suggest to the Premier yesterday that we should be making a little documentary series on Australia's most interesting live democratic experiment that is being played out in Parliament House now. It is a most fascinating situation where you have 14 seats for the government, 10 seats for the Labor Party, 4 seats for the Greens, and then 7 other independents. I mean, it is... I was saying to him, so when you stand for question time, do you literally have no idea what you're going to be asked? He said, no idea, and we're not allowed to have Dorothy Dixers anymore. I didn't say what I was thinking, which that's a relief, but it is a fascinating experiment. If you take it into the upper house, it becomes even more complex. It's a story that needs to be told. It's a story that cries out for being told because this fragmentation politically is happening all over the country and we need to examine it. I digress. Last year, our ABC Giving Tree broke all records, raising over $400,000, kick-started as usual by a generous donation on behalf of Tasmanians by the Premier. The ABC Giving Tree is Tasmania's largest Christmas charity and has been running since 1988, and every dollar, of course, stays in Tasmania. And we, of course, have broadcast rights to the games of the Tasmanian Devils, something which we kicked off by covering their first VFL game at North Hobart Oval on March the 21st. No comment. This state is a truly amazing place. It brings home to me the common observation that it's often the peripheries whose ideas come to transform the centre. You'd expect the big cities of Melbourne and Sydney to be the initiators of our most outstanding art and culture, but it took our offshore state with the smallest population to give us two of our most internationally celebrated creators, the Booker Prize winner Richard Flanagan and the creator of the Museum of Old and New Art, David Walsh. As well, some of our top writers like Amanda Lowry, Danielle Wood, Heather Rose and Robbie Arnott, all based here and featured regularly on the ABC. As my friend Richard Flanagan has written, Tasmania's unfortunate history has always bred extremes and revolt. From such places, unique and challenging cultures and ideas invariably follow. We have a very human attraction to what's going on at the edges, places with a certain darkness and uneasy history, but also a certain warmth, charm and community spirit. That's why so much interesting drama and comedy is coming from the island state, like Bay of Fires, the 2-series, 8-part crime thriller drama series set on the West Coast, the whimsical Rosehaven, that wonderfully likeable and popular show about nothing in particular and yet about everything human. It really caught on for no fewer than 5 consecutive seasons. Teenage Boss, Next Level, which had its 4th series last year, and wonderful, uniquely Tasmanian documentaries like The Platypus Guardian and Living with Devils, which I'm sure you all remember. Right now, we're loving Tonight at the Museum, set at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery, giving Australians insight into its amazing collection and the state's fascinating history. And soon you'll be able to watch a new comedy, as you saw, Ground Up, with Sam Pang. Let me read to you the official synopsis. Set in Tasmania, the series follows AFL administrator Hugh Shen, dispatched from Melbourne to establish the island's first ever AFL team. But there's a catch. The locals must build a brand new stadium, and not everyone's happy about the $1.13 billion taxpayer-funded spend. It's completely fictional, of course. Let us know what you think. Add to this our regular program visits, Gardening Australia, Grand Designs, Backroads, Landline, and the overall boost to the Tasmanian economy and the state's 4,000 strong arts workforce from all this is considerable. It's helping create a true sense of place and personality, which is a precious thing indeed in the face of a never-ending tsunami of global content. The ABC's best productions remind us that Australia is different in so many ways. Over the past 5 years, the ABC has commissioned 7 shows where majority production was in Tasmania. Some 50% of the cast and over 40% of the crew of Bay of Fires originated from here. Queenstown, where it was filmed, benefited enormously. Across its 5 seasons, Rosehaven contributed approximately $10 million to Tasmanian wages, goods and services, with 80 to 100 Tasmanian jobs for each season. We, of course, acknowledge the strong support of the state government through its Island Screen Incentive Program. I have to say the ABC contributed about 4 or 5 times more than from the Screen Incentive Program, but it was valuable, and multipliers matter in film production generally. Friends, Tasmania and our nation need a strong ABC as never before. There are challenges before our nation which Tasmanians understand better than most, like adult literacy, where there are numerous signifiers of something approaching a national emergency. Not just here, but nationwide. Similarly, we're seeing distressing signs of serial neglect in core educational fundamentals, such as school libraries, which many of you may not know are now treated as optional and discretionary to the judgment of school principals alone across Australia in every public education system. Libraries are not a normal part of school life that can be assumed by parents, teachers, or students. And people wonder why we have a literacy problem. School librarians' skills and knowledge in managing information and media literacy is essential to all students' learning, understanding and navigating the information terrain of the modern world. If we don't see action on matters like this from the ABC, then I ask you all, where will we see it? We're aiming always to have a real impact across a breadth of content matched by no one else. But in areas such as children's programming, educational programming, documentary production, current affairs output, and longitudinal investigative work which tests public policy effectiveness, Australians rely primarily on the ABC. I might add, other media do also. Friends, there's serious work to be done to get our nation and its people on the right track in an increasingly challenging world. To do it more effectively will require investment. Telling our stories, providing people with that priceless, ineffable matter core to living, the truth, educating the young about the world they are inheriting, getting us all laughing and crying and being together, and keeping us thinking about that all-important idea, what it means to be an Australian in a prescient and often perplexing and increasingly dangerous world. We're fortunate to have a parliament and government that supports this crucial work. Around the world, public broadcasters are meeting government hostility. We, by contrast, have held our ground and in places gone forward with so much further to go to maintain contemporary relevance and meet avowed audience and community needs. Now imagine what we could achieve with a serious uplift in investment. Notwithstanding truly welcome increases since 2022, ABC operational funding has fallen by 12% in real terms since 2013-14 and by more than 30% since the mid-1980s. Time for some Andrew Bent-style spirit and real investment uplift. After all, the Australian people and our sense of identity, social cohesion and national confidence are the true net beneficiaries, and never have they been more needed. Keep supporting and fighting hard for the ABC. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chairman Captain Kim Williams. Give him another round of applause. It's, got the button wrong. And I can't wait to see our friends and colleagues maybe at Sky take umbrage at the ABC's campaign to restore librarians to schools as some insidious, woke, sort of terrible attack on Australian psyche and culture. Because real Australians don't read books.
Reading?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Reading?
And of course, real Australians love books. We've got an amazing actual book industry, and especially here in Tasmania. Thank you for your insights as well into some Tasmanian stories that were unfamiliar to me, and it's so powerful to connect with those as part of our heritage and history and the work that we do. I'm really here to facilitate your questions for Kim, so if you have a question, please pop your hand up and I'll come to you with the microphone. All right, hello, what's your name? This is Jocelyn Nettlefold.
Hello, thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Jocelyn
Kim,
Meadow-Fold.
please.
Kim, former editorial manager at the ABC and academic in local media. I'm really interested in your definition within contemporary contexts of a town square. And have you identified opportunities for citizen engagement that the ABC is not yet realising?
It's something that we talk about regularly, and in fact we have the board has a strategy session next month when we're spending a couple of days looking at things that we need to do, things we need to initiate and do better, and things we need to stop doing. You can't be everything to everyone, and so you need to prioritise and look to invest. And we've just done the biggest single piece of audience research in the ABC's history. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating research. And I had the pleasure of sitting down for a very long presentation on it last week. And the one thing that comes through resonantly in that research, across the spectrum of the Australian community, regardless of age, gender, geography, family circumstances, whether people are single or in large family groupings, is that Australians have a burning desire to see an investment in community. It's really, really overwhelming. And I'd have to say, at a time which is so governed by fragmentation, dislocation, and by conscious division making, I mean, clearly things like the aforementioned news service on another platform, where they deliberately aim to inspire division in the community. Australians are saying, no, we don't want that. We don't want division. We want to find ways to come together. And so it's a very real challenge. Clearly, the ABC has had many, many iterations of programming that gives agency to people in order to interrogate decision makers and those in power. And those things need to be regularly refreshed and reimagined. We have a terrible habit in Australia of treating all things as if they should just go on, rather than actually being reinvented and reimagined and reprocessed in ways that make them relevant to the current time. And so we're looking at a number of options in that area, and I think there'll be some exciting outcomes. When I started as the chair, I spent a lot of time talking to a very large number of people outside the ABC and inside the ABC. I received thousands of messages when I first started, and I promised myself I would reply to them all. I was not entirely successful in that because I hadn't anticipated receiving. I stopped counting when we got to about 5,000 messages. But I did my very level best. But in getting that kind of onslaught, there was lots of really valuable information inside it, because clearly the majority of people who wrote to me I did not know. Now, I know a lot of people, but I was quite overwhelmed by it. And the thing that came through in the feedback was that people felt that the ABC had become timid, had become suborned to those who shout and who pontificate about the ABC, and that it had gone into a kind of passive mode of trying to assuage people. I happen to think that's right, and I think the response is not to be aggressive. The response is to do better work. The response is to do relevant work. The response is to actually challenge oneself to really supercharge the sense of contemporary relevance in the organisation. And contemporary relevance also means looking at the past. To not do infotainment style documentaries, but to actually do serious work that actually looks at our institutions, work like Larissa's program on the High Court. I do hope you've all watched it. It's really very good. I mean, really, I think she did a really terrific job of it. I mean, I've been talking to her about it for a year and a half. It's really excellent. Similarly, Annabelle's program. Really, that was a terrific feast to actually understand that we have the best electoral system in the world. One cephalogist said to me, well, Norway's a little bit better. And I said, oh, right, got that. But,
All right.
I mean, we have much to be proud of in the way we manage things in our electoral system and to celebrate. But people don't know if you don't tell them. People don't know if you don't share and if you don't create that environment. And we need to give agency to the community to be able to swap. So we're looking at, strictly between us, we're looking at one program that is actually trying to straddle in different, two audiences in the same program between regions and metro, and to actually get people much closer together. But it's only one of many ideas.
Brilliant.
Sorry to be so long-winded.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And just wait till you see what brings a community together here in Tassie. Well, you've done a funny little comedy show about it, but wait till you see the real thing, Kim. That's what brings community together, stadiums.
Thank you. My name's Kevin O'Day. I'm from Launceston. It seems to me like you've had a road to Damascus conversion type experience over the years. You were working for the Australian for a long time, and
No, it wasn't actually.
I really do wish the Australian would just back off, on its campaign. They seem to be quite intimidating, really quite bizarre sometimes in terms of their campaign against Andy, and I just wonder whether you can get them back off at some stage.
Well, look...
Thanks, Kevin.
I mean, some media enterprises make it their mission in life to say unpleasant things about the ABC and to make all manner of accusations about the ABC in ways that are less than graceful. My view on most of those things is to ignore them, because the worst thing that you can do is to amplify them. And that is exactly what they want. They are taunting all the time, wanting to get a reaction, because that creates conflict, and conflict creates audience, and they invent a process management system for division. So in the vast majority of instances, I maintain a public silence. It would be wrong to assume that that's a private silence. I am a vigorous correspondent with many people, correcting them in very, very direct Anglo-Celtic ways of the error in their judgment. I actually only worked in the news part of the News Corporation for a period of 22 months. And I took the job reluctantly, because I said I said to Rupert Murdoch, there'll be tears before bedtime here, Rupert. I said, who's in charge? He said, you'll be in charge. I said, bullshit. And he said, no, you'll be in charge. I said, I don't believe you. There'll be tears before bedtime. He said, don't be so ungracious. And I said, well, I've always been a very truthful person, I'm telling you. And so 22 months later, I said, Rupert, it's very clear to me, one of us has to go.
I think it's such a powerful point you make that division gets attention. Part of our charter is to make our community and audiences cohesive, and it takes a lot of courage to do that every day and not just go for that easy jugular. And the support for that from the ABC and from friends is so important in that work. Another question, I'll come one this side, then I'll come one that side, and we'll probably be there. Hello. You might need to abridge that a little bit. Okay.
Okay, I was really heartened, and you talked about your consultation Oh, okay. When you said the ABC must be a serious and trustworthy presence in the midst of myths and disinformation, and you also recognise that at times it adopted a tabloid sensibility. Just to this matter, I was hoping as chair of the ABC, you could look at ABC News and Current Affairs' regular reliance on vox pops to frame serious issues, particularly in relation to climate change-driven weather events. Too often reports rely on the views of random beachgoers, passers-by, or in one instance, an ice cream vendor, as these opinions actually contribute meaningful insight into complex scientific matters. This style of reporting elevates uninformed opinion to the same level as evidence-based expertise and can risk becoming a form of misinformation, which you've talked about, and disinformation. Finishing now, but the ABC has an important responsibility not merely to reflect opinion, but to inform the public accurately and intelligently. I hope this is something we can strengthen the years ahead. What's your opinion?
Does the lived experience of the ice cream vendor at the cutting edge of climate change, Kim Williams, hold sway with experts?
I mean, you're all familiar with the term vox pops, I'm sure, referring to vox populi, the voice of the people. Look, it is part and parcel of some news coverage that has become a regular component of giving agency in a very limited way to community members over issues of consequence that is embraced by many media organisations. I am not personally an enthusiast for it, but I know that colleagues think that it actually gets a sense of community heartland coming into the telling of a story. I have limited patience for that kind of approach, but I know there are many other points of view. And so I don't think I can respond more helpfully than that. The ABC board's role in relation to issues of that kind is to process a very large number of pieces of feedback annually. They all come across, unless they go directly to journalists, they come across my desk. I think last year it was about 185,000 pieces of information. Now there's a small department that deals with that, but I can tell you if something is attacking one of our journalists, and they are ones that I reply to very directly in defence of our people. We don't get a lot of comment about that sort of thing. Some of the material that we receive is unrepeatable.
Good morning, Kim. I've read your 185,000 messages, and the general gist is the ABC is wonderful and Australians love community. Enjoy your coffee. We have time for one more question. This is Carolyn.
Hi Kim, Caroline Sharpen here.
Hi Caroline.
Thought it was lovely to see you. I wondered if it might be
Caroline's the CEO of the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, and she does an absolutely amazing job. As does the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, I might say.
but I have the best job in the world, no doubt. Kim, I wondered if it might be a good place to finish. I think if we imagine that sometimes it's very disempowering to be awash in this sea of information, fragmentation of media, constant digital noise. I think everybody is in this room because they care passionately about the ABC, and we're inspired to hear you speak with such ambition for what the ABC is. Is there some practical advice you would give us all as champions as to what we can do as individuals and as a group in Tasmania to make a difference to your ability to achieve your ambition?
Look, I think any advocacy to politicians to remind them of the way in which the ABC is a force for good in Australia, that it's a force for good for Australian children, that it's a force for good in Australian education, that it's a source for good in terms of interrogating public policy in ways that are focused on the national interest, that it's a force for good in providing a wealth of diverse entertainment to Australians, that it is a service that is provided across the length and breadth of the country with all of its services for free to everybody. and it is something that is a great companion to people, is good. I mean, we need to be positive in our advocacy. We need to be absolutely not shy about saying there needs to be investment. Now, I could bore you with a bunch of statistics which I regret to say are very firmly implanted in the centre of my hypothalamus. But at the turn of the century, the ABC represented 0.31% of federal outlays. It now represents 0.13% of federal outlays. That is a dramatic change. Now, the ABC in that same time has made lots of efficiencies. It's lost a lot of people in its workforce. Back in the 90s, the ABC had peaked at a workforce of over 10,000 people. There's now 5,000 people that work at the ABC. I think the effective full-time jobs is about 4,763. So there have been very, very serious dietary impositions on the ABC, which the ABC, to the best of its ability, has responded to without impacting the public, and has sustained an increased level of service to the community because of all of the demands of being able to compete in a digital world with a range of digital products. It will surprise you all to learn that ABC Jazz is run by 3 people. 3 people who are absolute jazz fanatics. They adore jazz, they're incredibly knowledgeable, and they do it with a passion that is unmatched inside, in my view, unmatched in the organisation. And that's a terrific thing. But it can't keep on going like that. Making video programming is expensive. And we need to do it well. And we need to do more of it. Doing children's programming, we really need to double down on. The ABC is the only provider of Australian children's programming in Australia. There are no others. There is no regulation any longer for commercial television to have kids programming. There is no requirement on Netflix or Disney, although Disney is the biggest broadcaster of Bluey outside of Australia. And I see it as a kind of hitback that Australian values and Australian personality is dominating American kids' screens. You know, like about time. But we need to make more. There's not enough children's programming. There's not enough education programming. Now, we're required by law to consult and work with all of the state education departments and to provision education material that is designed for young Australians and for teenagers. Well, we need to really, really excel in that area. This area of developing explainer journalism in consumable, bite-sized pieces of 3 to 5 minutes is so important. I mean, believe it or not, slopagander is ruling the day. And we want the exact opposite of that. We want helpful, informative, appealing, nourishing material that is fun to watch and that actually can speak with some sense of inherited wisdom from our country.
Brilliant.